Today's Bears mailbag is presented by Roan. Get yourself some awesome clothing from Roan, and they're machine washable. Don't have to go to the dry cleaner anymore. Use code ChatSports at roan.com/chatsports. It's RHONE to get 20% off. Before we get to some super chats, we got F. Marsh, who's a player in the first round we're not talking about enough that the Bears could draft. It's a good question. I mean, I think we've talked a lot about the legitimate number 9 pick type of options. But which are these players, by the way? These are a lot of them. Odunze, Dallas Turner, Fuaga, Jared Verse, Byron Murphy, Olu Fashanu, Brock Bowers, Latu. You know, if something crazy happens in Malik Neighbors' fall, like we've certainly talked a lot about most of these players. But I think some sneaky, like, trade down type of targets that we haven't spent a ton of time on. A guy we haven't talked about at all, actually, which I think we should because he's just had a top 30 visit. Graham Barton, the interior offensive lineman out of Duke. Very versatile player. I think if you trade down into the late teens or early 20s, he could be in play. Jackson Powers Johnson, obviously, still don't have a long-term center. Both Barton and JPJ could be that. Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, Brian Thomas Jr. We spent some time on those guys, but they could be some players. Chop Robinson, traits guy, you know, Matt Eberflus would be interested. So those are some names to monitor. But again, if they stay at 9, we kind of know who the suspects are at this point in time. Now, name a round 1 sleeper for Chicago. Now, obviously, if you go in the first round, you're not a sleeper. But a round 1 sleeper for the Bears, someone we're not talking enough about. Drop his name in the comments right now and let us know who that player is. Shout out to Paleo. He sends in a super chat. We appreciate the 5. He says, if we get a second, your thoughts on wide receiver Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky or offensive guard Christian Haynes from UConn in the second round. I think Corley in round 2 is a tick rich for me. I think he's probably more of a round 3 guy, but he's going to be one of those prospects where some players or some boards have him top 50. Others have him, closer to 100. So, it wouldn't shock me. For me, it's a little rich. Christian Haynes, I do think second, third round guy. He's really athletic. He can maul. Some think he can play center in the NFL. If the Bears are one of those teams, that would kind of move him up a few spots. So, yeah, if you end up getting a second round pick, those are a couple of guys that could be in play. Tito with the 5, appreciate the super. He says, is it just me or even with the number 1 pick, training camp on how the Bears look on paper? We got to wait till week 6 to actually be excited for this team. I mean, that's really up to you to decide, right? Like, I'm pretty excited right now, but in terms of, like, excited about what you think they can do in 2024, like, yeah, we're going to have to see them play a game or two, obviously. It's all projecting right now, but you can see the vision. You can see the roster come together. We saw it in the second half of last season. After an 0-4 start, they went 7-6 the rest of the way. I mean, if they went 2-2 to start the year instead of 0-4, they might have been a playoff team. So, it feels like they're close to at least being a playoff team. But, yeah, I mean, I can't blame you guys if you want to pump the brakes and, kind of see how the first month and a half goes. Julian Gonzalez, expectations for Tyler Scott this season. That's a tough question to answer right now. That would be easier to answer after the draft because do the Bears add a receiver at 9? If they do, then he's, competing for wide receiver 4. But if he has a chance to be wide receiver 3, then, he could be a real contributor. I will say this. I want him to be a guy that when he's on the field, you at least feel like, okay, he could make a big play here. Like, that to me is like his ideal role where you can use him in jet sweep action where if he hits the hole, he could go for 20+. You want to send him on some go routes, on some screens, get him the ball in space. He's an explosive player, and we saw him come up with a few big plays late in the season last year, but there were some drop issues, some route running that needs to be tightened up, knowing where you're at in the field like that Atlanta game. Remember, Justin threw a nice ball to him in the back line of the end zone, but he was out of bounds. If he knew where he was at, it should have been a touchdown. So, yeah, like, can you be a guy that, changes 2 or 3 games with a big play? Like, that's kind of what I'm hoping for and just some overall better consistency. You want to talk consistency? Let me tell you about Roan. The best men's closet wear out there because that's what Roan did. They revitalized the male closet because, things had gotten stale in men's fashion. And, Roan has really upped their game with their classic looks and their comfortability. Their 4-way stretch fabric is awesome. the commuter collection has it all. You got the dress shirts, you got the casual polos, you got the pants, you got the joggers. Machine washable, that's the game changer here. You don't have to go to the dry cleaners. You can wash these clothing items in the washing machine, air dry them, boom, you are good to go. So listen, get 20% off at roan.com/chatsports. Use code chatsports, and guess what? You're going to end up saving money with that code, and in the long run, because A, this clothing is high-quality material, it's going to last a while, and B, no dry cleaning. You don't have to add that to your monthly bill. You are good to go. I can't recommend Roan enough. I've been with them for a couple of years. They've been fantastic. Roan.com/chatsports. Link is in the comments and in the description. Click and shop today. It's RHONE.com/chatsports for 20% off. Hashtag Bears from Lalo. How do you feel about Tez Walker? Rolly, you want to chime in on Tez Walker? And by the way, I don't know if you saw this because you weren't on our live show on Monday when we did a mock draft. I went YOLO. I took him in the 3rd round.
Oh,
Is he the most boomer bust receiver in the draft?
Yeah, I think he can be good, but to me, it's still about if he gets in the right system. He's very questionable with his route running. His hands are also spotty. But with his 6'1", 6'2" frame and his 4.36 speed, there is a lot out there that could be liked. I just am not the biggest on his hands and route running ability. This is coming from someone who had to root for him at North Carolina, so even I am a little skeptical.
This was kind of my justification for it. You already have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, so it's kind of like, hey, just go run 10 go balls a game. Is that number 3 guy? Maybe you catch one of them. So I don't love the player, but he's a guy that, like, I think he could be like an MVS where, like, two or three games a year he changes a game for you.
Which is why he should be going late second in that 3rd round, not the initial 1st-round buzz he was receiving.
Luckily, that went away after the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, everyone saw right through it after that week performance.
Yeah, route running's not great, but number 3, number 4 receiver, certainly not bad. Chad Little here. Would you trade number 9 and 75 to Tennessee for 7 if Romer Neighbors is there? I'm open to it. I certainly am not against it. It really just depends how confident you are one of them falls to 9 and how high they are on your board. If one of them's there and they're a top 5 player on your board and you feel like that player is like a 10-year player for you, like, it's hard to argue against it, right? But even though this is a draft where you don't need a ton of picks, in my opinion, I still would not – I don't love the idea of picking at 1 and 7 and then not again until the 4th round. So I'd have to really like the player. Like, if it's Neighbors, I'd be more inclined to do it. If somehow Marvin Harrison is there at 7, I'd definitely be inclined to do it. But it would have to be for a player you're extremely convicted about. Poppy Chulo sits. Appreciate the super chat, my friend. He says, does the new kicking rule eliminate muffed punts? I don't think so. What would the new rule? I don't know why the new rule would eliminate that. So, no, I don't think it does. Kevin Bates, what do you think trade compensation would be for Khalil Herbert? I don't know, 5th, 6th, something like that. And in a draft that's not considered deep, I'd probably just keep him unless it's a pick in the top 4 rounds, which I don't think it would be. So, look, he's a running back on an expiring rookie deal. You're not going to get a ton for him, even though he's been a really productive kind of number 2 back for this team. Subscribe to the channel if you want to be a part of these live mailbags. You got to subscribe, got to turn on notifications, and join our live shows to get your questions in. That's the only time we do these live mailbags. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Alex Weddle, give me Newton at 15 in a trade down. Jer'Zhan Newton. I think he's a prime trade down candidate. I did a video of trade down targets. He was one of them. I'll be curious to see where he goes. He's got a workout coming up. I think next week maybe he's going to work out for teams because he's been recovering from a surgery. So I'll be curious to see how he looks in that, how teams kind of rate that workout, where he's at in his recovery process, because that's probably costed him some money. You know, coming into the draft process, he was considered the top defensive tackle, but I think Byron Murphy has surpassed him. But, yeah, in a trade down, Newton or Murphy would be great. And honestly, Murphy could be in play at 9. Jen says, Harrison, what are the chances you think we get MHJ? I don't know, 7%. I wouldn't rule it out. If it does go 4 quarterbacks to start the draft, which we'll see, I think it at least is a possibility at that point because the Chargers have been a team rumored to be willing to trade down at 5. So, maybe you trade 9 and a second next year to get up to 5 or something like that. But I don't think it's great. 7, 10%, a chance, but not a great one. Julian Gonzalez, do you think Jack Sanborn has another level to him? I mean, I think he's a guy that can continue to improve, but he's not going to be a guy that takes huge jumps, which he doesn't really need to be. He's already a good player. I think he's proven he's a starting caliber linebacker in this league. He can be a number 2 on a kind of a nickel situation. The beauty here is he's your third backer. So I think he's kind of one of those guys that, due to his athletic traits, high floor, low mid ceiling, so which is fine. They got him as an undrafted free agent. He's a solid NFL linebacker, which for when they got him and how little he cost, that's terrific for the Bears. Follow me on Instagram. It's at HGramNFL, posting short form content, photo posts, and a whole lot more around the Bears on a daily basis over there. So if you want to stay up to date with what we're doing on that platform, give me a follow at HGramNFL. More to come over there.